Hello and welcome back to my channel. I have some hard-boiled eggs that I made yesterday, and so I'm making some egg salad sandwiches and deviled eggs. So I wanted to peel these eggs and do a little story time with you guys because I wanted to talk about my birth story with my first son because it was so special. I feel like it was my very first pregnancy, very first birth, everything, and I don't know, when you go through it the first time, you just don't know what to expect. And this is not what I expected at all, was just how it went. So, my son was born at 37 weeks. I had ended up going into my 37-week checkup, and the nurse was like, "Oh, wow, you're really swollen. Are you doing okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just, getting to the end of my pregnancy." And so she took my blood pressure and she said, "Oh no, your blood pressure is really high. Like, we're gonna go ahead and send you to triage." I'm like, what? So I got in the car and called my husband and I was in tears and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're gonna send me, they're gonna monitor me. And he was having actually lunch with his dad. So he's like, okay, as soon as I'm done, I will come over there, because I thought it was just kind of a false alarm. They just want to make sure the baby's okay, because I still have 3 more weeks. Like, I didn't know. And so, oh my gosh, this is so difficult. I love when they just peel off so easily. They are not. That's okay. But yeah, so I go to triage. They like hook me up to everything, and essentially they're like, let's just run some tests, everything. So we ended up being there for like 4 hours. He came and met me, and we just sat there. Finally, I'm like, okay, well, if anything would have happened by now, they would have told us. So I ended up getting like all dressed and everything. So then they're like, okay, we're just waiting for this last test. And then we'll bring the doctor back to kind of talk to you and see what's going on. So there ended up that there was like protein in my urine and my high blood pressure and something about, I don't remember if it was potassium now. I don't know, but it came back that I had mild preeclampsia, so they were going to induce me, and I was gonna have my baby that night. So I was extremely scared, but mostly just so excited because I'd always my whole life wanted to be a mom. So I immediately called my mom. I'm like, yeah, we're doing it. She was like an hour away, so they like hurried up and they like got home, and they came and like visited us. And so I had told the doctors that I didn't want to be induced if I could help it. And so they're like, okay, well, let's give it like a couple hours. Through everything, my son's heartbeat was phenomenal. So we are very grateful for that. But I said I didn't want to do Pitocin unless we had to. So, and that was just a personal preference. I just wanted to be able to go into labor naturally if I could. So I wanted to see if it would happen. So he said, okay, we'll give it an hour and see. So they checked me and I was 3 centimeters dilated. So they're like, yeah, we're definitely like having the baby tonight. We're gonna see what happens. I'm like, okay, let's just see what happens. So thankfully I ended up progressing on my own. I didn't have to do Pitocin. My water never broke, so they actually had to break my water. I never felt a single contraction. That was something that was very strange to me, is I was like having minor contractions like when I was hooked up to the machine, but I never felt them. So it was very bizarre, but my water never broke. So she ended up breaking my water at 7 centimeters. And immediately I started feeling those contractions. I was like, okay, let's do the epidural now. So I ended up getting it like maybe 45 minutes later, and I was able to take like just a quick nap, and then he was born at 3:36 a.m. It was, I think I pushed for like 45 minutes, but I think the scariest thing was just how high my blood pressure was, because I was only in the hospital with him. He was healthy. He ended up having jaundice, so he didn't have to go under the light or anything, but the week after like he was born, we had to keep taking him to the doctor every single day to get his little foot pricked to check his jaundice levels. Wow, that one came out really good. To check his jaundice levels. And finally, on like the 7th day that he had been born, he his levels finally started going down. So we didn't have to do anything with that. He just was good. So he was a very yellow baby when he was born because of the jaundice. But he was born on October 5th, 2019, 3:36 a.m., 6 pounds, 3 ounces, 20 inches long. So, and to this day, he has always been in like the 90th percentile for height. And now his last checkup when he was 3, he's in like the 99th percentile. And he's just a very tall boy, like very tall and skinny. And then my second son, I'll tell you his birth story too, because his just happened 5 months ago. I could not have had more opposite pregnancies with these two. My first pregnancy was an absolute dream. Like I would forget I was pregnant most of the time. Like I just didn't feel pregnant. My second pregnancy, I was sick the entire time. And that was miserable. So, I mean, it is what it is. It's okay. But I was sick and I also had a toddler to take care of. So that was very difficult. But yeah, I mean, with my first son, it was just scary because I had to stay in the hospital an extra day because of the preeclampsia. They wanted to make sure my blood pressure was good before they can send me home. But I do remember like I would be like holding him and I would kind of get like dizzy. And so they told me that's just something that way I have to be like very cautious about. And so it ended up being okay. Obviously, we're good now. I never had any other issues. And so I did talk to the doctors this time about my first pregnancy. And they said, okay, well, we'll just kind of keep an eye out for preeclampsia. Luckily, I did not have it. So I was only in the hospital for 24 hours with my second son, which was really good because he was actually born November 23rd, 8 minutes before Thanksgiving. So we were in the hospital all of Thanksgiving, and that's okay. And this year, actually, I believe his birthday in 2023 is going to be on Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving's on the 23rd of November this year. So that'll be kind of fun. He's a little turkey baby, but that was a total, like my first like labor, when I went into labor, it was so shocking because I just wasn't prepared. I went in my appointment and, ooh, you're having your baby. This one, oh no, I knew I was in labor. Like I was contracting, wowzer. We ended up going to the hospital just because I was so scared because of the whole preeclampsia thing with my first. If I felt any kind of like little thing, like little tiny contraction, like we went into the hospital and we ended up going in 2 times. And then the 3rd time they ended up admitting us. But the first time we went in, I was like, oh, I'm just like having contractions. And they were just like minor ones and then they would kind of go away. And I got checked, I think this was at 37 weeks, and I was 3 centimeters dilated and 80% effaced, but it didn't progress. So they ended up sending me home. Then I was having like kind of more severe contractions one morning, like a week later. This was at 30, I think it was probably like, 38 weeks. And I, again, was the exact same, 3 centimeters dilated, 80% effaced. And so at my 38-week checkup, my midwife was like, do you want to do a membrane sweep? Like, my baby was huge. Like, okay, I shouldn't say huge. Compared to 6 pounds, 3 ounces, yeah. So when at his, I think it was the 37-week checkup, we did a little ultrasound. Because I actually ended up having COVID with him when I was 10 weeks pregnant. And so they just didn't know like how my pregnancy was going to go or if there was going to be complications, or we didn't know. Luckily, there weren't any complications. He was perfectly fine. But yeah, so I ended up getting my membrane sweep, and within 24 hours, I had gone into labor, and I was just so like gun shy to go into the hospital. So that morning I started feeling contractions the morning of the 23rd, and my husband's parents were in town visiting because they were here for Thanksgiving. And I remember they were like, oh, like, I wanna, like, let's go get a steak. And so we were like, well, it's the day before like Thanksgiving. I don't know what's gonna be open. So we ended up going to Texas Roadhouse, and I was kind of contracting that whole day, but they weren't like super painful. It was just like uncomfortable. So I remember taking like a warm shower and everything felt like fine. Then I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like so hungry. So I ended up going to Texas Roadhouse. Like 5 minutes into the drive, I'm like, I'm having pretty good contractions. Like, I'm pretty sure this is what it feels like. But I didn't know, because with my first son, I didn't feel a single contraction. Like until they broke my water. But like with my second son, my water didn't break either. And it was just one of those things where I just ended up going into labor. I was at Texas Roadhouse. I was like, we were eating, and finally I decided, we were in the car, and I said, I'm gonna start, because I downloaded the contraction app. So I said, let me start timing these. So I start timing them, and they're getting pretty close together. So we're like eating, and I go, ooh, this is getting pretty crazy. But I wanted to make sure that I ate. So I'm like, you know what, we gotta go. I'm like, take me to the hospital. And so I'm like, wow, this is it for sure. And so the Texas Roadhouse, currently we live 7 minutes away from the hospital. So it was perfect. But the Texas Roadhouse was like 30 minutes. It was probably 20 minutes out of the way. So it was like a 30-minute drive to get to the hospital. I'm like, oh no, this is just crazy. So terrible though. So my son had like a hot dog and like some rolls and lemonade. And I don't know if it's like he was nervous or what, but he ended up throwing up in the car on the way to the hospital. So I'm like, oh my gosh, like I just felt so bad, but I couldn't like do anything. I had to get to the hospital. So my husband like dropped me off at the hospital. This was like at 8 o'clock at night. I'm like, just drop me off, take him home, get him all cleaned up, take him to my parents' house, and then come back and be with me. Like I will let you know if this is real. Maybe I'm just being a baby. So he dropped me off. I ended up having to walk all the way to the ER because the like little, whatever it's called, labor and delivery unit or whatever, was closed for the night. So I had to walk over to the ER. Luckily no one was there. So they kind of like, she was checking me in, and I'm like, oh wow, this is for real. She's like, do you know a wheelchair? I'm like, yeah, I think so. And so I sit in the wheelchair, and I'm like, oh no, this is bad. So she called for transport. They came and got me, brought me up to the room. And at this point, I'm like, yeah, this is for sure it. Like, I couldn't even call my mom or anyone. I was just like in pain. That one did not come out very well. So I'm like, okay, this is it. So she checked me, and I'm like, oh, I've got to be at least at a 6. She checked me, and I was 9 centimeters dilated. My water still had not broken. So that was just crazy. It's crazy that my water didn't break with either of my kids. Like, I don't know why. I'm glad, because it probably would have been even more painful, but I was like, oh my gosh, I'm at 9 centimeters. So my husband calls me. He's like, okay, I got Owen all situated. He's with my parents. I'm on my way back. I have the hospital bag, all that. I'm like, okay. He's like, are they keeping you? Like, what's the deal? I'm like, yeah, I'm at 9 centimeters. And he's like, oh shoot, like I'm coming. So he books it, he comes in, and I was like, so my midwife was like, do you wanna like have the baby, or do you want to get an epidural? I'm like, no, I want the epidural. Like I love giving birth. Like, I just feel like it's the most empowering, just wonderful thing ever. I just love it. So I wanted to enjoy it. So, I was like, let's do the epidural now, and then like, wait. I highly recommend to anyone, if you can, just get the epidural. Don't be the hero. Don't. You'll have so much better like birthing experience if you just get the epidural. I mean, I know everyone has their own opinions, and I trust your opinion and respect your opinion, but let me tell you, oh, it's such an amazing experience when you can just not focus on the pain and just focus on pushing your baby and meeting your baby. And oh my gosh, it's just phenomenal. But yeah, so they did the epidural, and then she's like, let's go ahead and break your water. You're at 10 centimeters. Let's break your water. I'm like, okay. And so she was like, well, actually, the first what happened was she's like, let's do the epidural, and then why don't you take like an hour nap, and we'll revisit in an hour, and we'll break your water if it hasn't broken, all that. I'm like, okay. So that was so amazing. I got to sleep. My husband actually slept in the bed next to me. That was cool. Almost no one was there because I think it's because it was Thanksgiving, but we pretty much had the whole like birthing floor to ourselves. And so, yeah, so we did that. She ended up breaking my water. I didn't feel that. Gosh, I am messing these up more and more. So I did not feel that. She broke my water. I was 10 centimeters. And then about 20 minutes later, I started pushing. I pushed like 3 times and he was here. It was the best experience. I am not even kidding you. The best experience. I loved it. I truly feel like this is what God put me on this planet to do. Like, I love being a mom. I love like having my kids. So glad that I was able to kind of have 2 different pregnancies and 2 different labors and deliveries so that I can kind of experience it, because wow, so different. I'm not sure if we're gonna, yes, my love. You watching your show? Okay. I'm not sure if we're gonna have a 3rd yet. Oh, you're playing your game. Is that food? Very cool. I'm not sure if we're gonna have a 3rd yet. I don't know. We'll wait. My boys are 3 years and 1 month apart. Almost 2 months. And I don't know if we want to have a 3rd. I think we're gonna wait until our second son is 3, like 2.5, and then kind of revisit it. But I think 3 would be our limit. I'm pretty sure. So we'll see. But yeah, so those are my birth stories. Very, very different. If I can give you any piece of advice, is don't worry so much about labor and delivery. That was my, like, the scariest thing to me leading up to it. I'm like, oh, I don't want to give birth. I'm like so afraid. But I'm like, no, literally, this is what our bodies were made to do this. And let me tell you, they are. It is truthfully the most wonderful thing. And just being in there, like in the hospital with your child, especially when it's your first, it's like, wow, this is so cool. But oh my gosh, I have the video. I might post it, we'll see. Of my older son meeting our second son in the hospital, and that was just, wow, the most amazing thing ever. Like, I cried, my husband cried. It was just absolutely wonderful. So if you are thinking, or if you're nervous about giving birth, don't be nervous. I know it's scary, trust me, it's a very scary thing to do. But your body, you were truthfully, that's what you were made for. Us as women, sorry, this is my last egg. Us as women, we are so strong, and I doubt myself all the time. I'm like, oh, I can't do that, no. And then I do it, and I'm like, wow, that's so cool. Like, I'm not even kidding. In high school, I literally said that I was never gonna have kids because they like show you the like birthing video and everything, and I'm like, no. It's not for me. I'm just either gonna adopt or I'm not gonna be a mom. Even though it was my lifelong dream to be a mother. Yeah, so all in all, highly recommend. I would probably do it 10 more times, but I'm not gonna. Maybe 1 more, we'll see. I feel like 2 kids is like perfect. But I want to do it maybe 1 more time. We'll see. but I just absolutely love being a mom to these 2 boys. It's the most gratifying thing ever. So yeah, so that is my birth story with my first and my second. We'll see if we end up having a third. But if you do have questions, please leave them down below. I know that everyone has such a different experience, and it's so hard to say, oh yeah, bring this, don't bring that. I learned I brought everything but the kitchen sink with my first son in our hospital bag. We used maybe 10% of what I brought. Like, you do not need a lot. You don't need a lot. It's something where you want to be prepared. You want to bring them 10 different outfits just in case. They're not going to be wearing any outfits. You're going to have them swaddled up because people come and check on them, like the nurses and everything, and do so many different tests on them. You don't want to have to undress them every single time. So they're going to be naked the majority of the time, or wearing their diaper, swaddled up in the hospital, and that's just the easiest thing. But yeah, so that is my story with my first and my second son. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have questions, please leave them in the comments and I would love to answer them. But I hope you have an amazing day, and I will see you in my next video.